Hello and welcome back to Small Talk. We've got a great episode ahead as we speak with current and former members of the women's basketball team at SUNY Geneseo. I'm your host, Katie Mucci. Each week on this show, we highlight the past and present of Division III, with both current and former student athletes joining to talk about their experiences, their favorite on-campus spots, the craziest road trip stories, and more. This week, we're chatting with three-time All-American and former women's basketball student athlete Megan Mackey, and a pair of current student athletes, Mackenzie Reigle and Kelly McLaughlin. We talk about their student athlete experience, that time the bus was stuck on the road, trips to Puerto Rico, and more. Thanks for joining this week. Now it's time for some small talk.
Hi, I'm Megan Mackey. I'm a former member of the women's basketball team at Geneseo.
Hi, I'm Kelly McLaughlin. I am a current member of the women's basketball team at SUNY Geneseo, and I am a senior.
I'm Mackenzie Reigle, and I'm a junior on the women's basketball team at SUNY Geneseo.
Well, thank you all for joining me today. I'm so excited to chat with you and talk about your time there up in New York. First, we're going to start out talking about things on campus, and maybe I'll have you, Mackenzie and Kelly, talk about where you and your teammates are hanging out on campus. Are there just like a quad, or are there coffee shops? What are kind of the main spots? And then Megan, if you want to follow up and let us know if that's the same spots you all were hanging out with your teammates. So Mackenzie, Kelly, get us started.
So last year we actually got a brand new student athlete resource center in the Mara Athletic Building. So I would say that's my personal favorite spot to hang out. It's all brand new, high tech, super cool in there. There's also a fuel station in there for us to grab a quick snack on our way to practice or leaving practice to go to class. So that'd be my personal go-to.
Yeah, I feel like the Student Athlete Resource Center is really popular right now. Like Kenzie said, it is really new. But also I feel like our teammates, we a lot of times just hang out in the locker room. We just got a brand new TV in there this year, which will be cool because we could stream stuff like our Netflix account or Hulu, whatever, if people want to sign in. But just we have little beanbag chairs in there, and it's really, the gym is central to campus. So if you kind of have time in between classes or, a little bit of time before practice, a lot of people honestly hang out in there and get their work done and stuff.
I am dripping with envy. Oh, that would have been so fantastic to have that when we were there, but we didn't have any of that. I was actually part of the naming of the Merritt Center. I actually introduced Dr. Merritt, which is funny. So I'm so envious. And that was not where we hung out. Our locker room was old and nasty. And so at that point, we would hang out in the hub. That's where the cool kids hung out. I don't know if it's still there anymore. And then I was so that was an eatery on campus, but it wasn't like the main dining hall. And then I was a bit of a nerd, so hung out in Milne Library with a bunch of teammates.
All right. So things have changed a little bit. Just a little. Megan, I'll have you start this one. So if I'm going to go visit campus, what are maybe your favorite spots that you guys would go out to eat, go out to hang out off campus? What are kind of those hot spots around town? And then same thing, you guys are going to follow up. Are they still there? Do you still go there? Let's talk about off campus a little bit.
All right. I know these are still there because I was there recently, but Aunt Cookies for subs in terms of the toasted bun. I mean, my buddies and I are like, we're all over the country and we'll text still about if anybody's going anywhere near Geneseo, they're getting a Aunt Cookie sub. And then late night was Mamma Mia's pizza to help absorb things in your stomach. Those were kind of the main go-tos for us.
Yeah, Aunt Cookies is still ragingly popular. Anybody that comes to Geneseo for the first time, if it's recruits and their family, we're like, you have to, if you didn't get lunch yet, go to Aunt Cookies. We honestly, I think almost every Tuesday home game last season, basically our whole team would go there for our pregame meal. We became really, really good friends with basically everybody that worked there. We even have one of our jerseys hanging up on the wall now that we all signed the team last year because we
That's awesome.
so much. So yeah, that's definitely my favorite spot, but there are a few new ones, right?
Going off of Aunt Cookie, she takes very good care of us when we go in as a team, and she knows all of us outside of walking in 13 of us at the same time, but she'll throw in a free cookie when we come in as a team, and she'll know what team we're playing, and she's great. She follows along with us, how our season goes all the time. Another one, I would say, like after a home game with our families, the Village Tavern, popular one. There's a new restaurant called Strange Design Brewery. Great burgers there, some chicken wings. So that one's a popular one.
Oh,
Is that right on Main Street?
Yeah, crickets. It's up by Walmart, actually.
It's up by Walmart. Okay. Yeah.
A little bit. It's hard to find if you don't know where it is, but
yeah.
Right.
I definitely recommend it.
And Crickets.
Oh, yeah.
Crickets used to be on Main Street, and now they moved right around the corner onto Center Street.
Okay.
Just a new location, but basically the same menu. I really like going there for like Sunday breakfast. Like they have good breakfast sandwiches and stuff.
It's a popular study spot too.
Yeah.
They combine intermissions that used to be the bar, so now it's like that part of the building and where Crickets is now, so it's pretty big in there.
Oh, good. Nice.
All right, well, I'm ready next time I come to town. I know exactly. I'm going to pull this episode up and listen back and hear it all. That's awesome. And I guess maybe I should have asked this earlier, Megan. You graduated from Geneseo and you've moved on now past the college life. What are you doing these days? And you mentioned that you've been back on campus recently. So are you still in the area?
I'm actually not. I'm out in Connecticut now. So I'm a good 5 to 6 hours from campus. And so I haven't been back in a couple of years now, but I used to, I typically catch the team when they play at New Paltz. I'm friendly with the head coach and the previous head coach. And so I stay connected and watch the team online and track everything. And so my closest friends are still my teammates, or a couple of my teammates. And so we're hoping to plan another trip. We planned a trip back a few years ago, and we're all able to go there. We went to practice. It was great. Coach took us in the locker room and stuff. And then, we're hoping to get back there again soon.
Awesome. So now we were a little bit off campus at the restaurants, but now we're going to go really off campus to talk about your travel. One thing I've mentioned every time I've done this podcast is in D3, you're pretty regional. So you're probably not hopping on a flight to all your games. Like you might in a different division. But let's talk about what the travel situation's like. And Megan, I'll have you start out with this. I always get some funny stories from the former student athletes about the travel experiences. So how were you guys traveling? Did you ever have to drive the van?
Well, we actually, back in the day, we thought we were a big deal because they did charter buses.
Good.
And so, coming from high school and being on the yellow buses, we thought we were a big deal. And I can't wait to hear if it's the exact same thing now, but back in the day, the guys always rode in the back and the girls always rode in the front. Yeah. And so one time what we did to mess with the guys was we got on and sat in the back, and it was like we had upended like the order of things, because the guys flipped out, refused to get on the bus, and we were in hysterics. It was fantastic. But then, then we got off and, let them get their typical seat. We were able to fly once, and that was because we made the Sweet 16 out in Salem, Massachusetts, and the guys also made the Sweet 16, but they were in New Jersey, and they were 10 miles short of the cutoff to be able to fly. So it felt like sweet redemption. They had to bus it 7 hours, and we got to fly. So that's our fun story.
We do still travel with the men's team, and they still get the back, and we still sit up front. But I think that would be a fun prank for us to pull on the guys.
Yeah, I think we got to pull that out of your page out of your.
Highly recommend.
Yeah. So some of the bus trips, when they're long, they get a little oh my gosh, I need to get off this bus or get up and walk around. But a lot of the times, people get their homework done and stuff like that. But other times we're playing games or watching movies. So honestly, sometimes I really like the time on the bus because it just feels like we're all hanging out together. Yeah. But we were able to fly last year around Christmas time because we took a trip to Puerto Rico for a tournament, which was really cool to be able to, well, I guess not really internationally, but kind of, it felt like it, even though it's part of the United States technically, but just getting on a flight and going to somewhere so different with your teammates when we're always just right up here in upstate New York. And it was a really different experience. So flying was cool with the team.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sure a much warmer experience too, getting out of upstate New York.
We got off the plane and everyone's stripping their sweatpants. Where are my shorts in my bag? I'm sweating.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's a hard flight to dress for.
Yeah.
To know what to bring. That's awesome. Well, that might lead right into my next question, or maybe you have a different answer, but you go on these road trips and maybe it's a big, cool place like Puerto Rico, or maybe it's just a rivalry. But were you guys getting any fun touristy type experiences or any experiences during that road trip, maybe on a day between games, or, when you have travel partners, you might have a little bit of time off? Mackenzie, you can start that.
I would say the most touristy experience was definitely Puerto Rico. When we were there, we had a day to walk around in Old San Juan. The tournament we went to, they provided a bus that took us to the gym every day, back to the hotel from the gym, and to this Old San Juan excursion that they had a little itinerary for us, but for the most part, we got to walk around and see where we wanted to see. And we did split up from the coaches for a little bit that day. I ended up losing my wallet that day, which was not a fun experience, but the whole experience in itself was amazing. We also got to do a paddleboarding excursion there. So that type of touristy stuff. And then this weekend, we're headed to New York City on Friday. We're playing 2 games on Long Island on Saturday and Sunday. So after a long bus ride Friday, we get to go tour the city a little bit.
That's awesome. Megan, how about you during your time?
Yeah, I mean, ours were always within New York, and you drove to the game, and then if there was a hotel to stay over, it was late that night, and then you got up the next day. So the only time we got any touristy thing was the Sweet 16 when we toured Salem for a little bit. That was about it.
Awesome. So now let's talk about your academics, the student part of student athlete. So I will first have you guys all share your majors. So Mackenzie, Kelly, you guys can start that out.
I'm a business administration major with minors in economics and human resources management.
And I'm a Spanish adolescent education major.
Oh, very interesting. I was an elementary and special education major with a math and computer science minor.
Okay. So maybe not a ton of overlap between those 3 majors. So I won't go too long on this, since you guys probably can't commiserate about the classes too much or anything, but I'll just, for Mackenzie and Kelly, what have been your favorite classes you've taken so far within your majors, and why?
It's a good question.
For me, I'm going to go with organizational behavior with Professor Jasawala, which a lot of students here would probably say they would disagree, but she runs a very professional course. Like, you have to go to class all the time. You have a group project that could, like, the paper you end up writing could be published. Like, she's so strict about it, but it ended up being a great experience for me just to work in that type of team environment. And I also was able to put that experience on my resume, been able to talk about that in some interviews. That course itself helped me realize I wanted to go into HR instead of just a broad business major. So it helped me narrow down what I want to do with my career.
I would say for mine, just my major is so different because I could relate to Megan in the educational aspect. Like, I'm sure our student teaching experiences might be similar. But for the Spanish side of things, I took a class, it's called Advanced Written and Oral Communication with Dr. Bernard, was my professor. And that just really pushed me in my language skills, because I'm obviously a native English speaker and nobody in my family speaks Spanish. So it's just, my acquisition of the language has been solely through, my public education in middle school and high school, and then continuing it in college now. So when I was in that class, it really pushed me both like writing and oral communication. And it made me feel like I did well in the class, but I felt like I wanted to get even better. So this past summer, I actually did a study abroad program for 6 weeks, and I lived in Spain with a host family who the woman I lived with spoke absolutely zero English. So kind of led me to that experience. And obviously being there for 6 weeks and kind of only speaking Spanish really pushed me forward in my language, and definitely prepared me for student teaching, which I'm actually doing right now this semester. So I'd say that was my favorite, that language class I took.
Kelly, I'd love to expand a little bit on that. So what made you, I guess maybe what piqued your interest back in middle school, high school for like Spanish learning, and then what has continued that for you? What has been the pick for you that's been so good?
Sure. So I always knew my whole life that I wanted to be a teacher. I come from a family of a lot of educators, but I didn't know specifically what area. Because I was a kid that I loved going to school. I hated missing school because I liked being with my friends, but I liked doing schoolwork. It sounds geeky, but like just liked being in the classroom and, you know, just being with my friends and making connections with my teachers and things like that. So it was, I mean, when I was in middle school, I thought, oh, wow, this is so cool. Now I get to learn a new language, even though in 7th and 8th grade, you're really not doing much with the language. I still felt like, oh, this is cool to be able to speak or at least kind of understand somebody that doesn't speak English. And then when I was in high school, I had 2 fantastic Spanish teachers that kind of, I don't want to say like, oh my gosh, they changed my life, but they really inspired me, I guess, in the educational sense, where I was like, they're such great teachers. And one of them was a native speaker, but one of them wasn't. And I was like, that's so cool that this teacher, she was born and raised in the United States, but she can communicate so well with anybody who speaks Spanish. And that just opens up so many doors for you. I feel like just in our country, there are so many Spanish speakers. It's the 2nd most commonly spoken language in this country. So I thought, I mean, I liked it. I love Spanish class. I was pretty good at it. And I thought, you know, that would be really useful in so many different areas of life, but I also could pursue my passion of being a teacher, which I knew that I wanted to be for a really long time. So I stuck with it through college. And of course, you can always change your major and stuff like that. But I came in freshman year as a Spanish education major and stuck with it all the way through. And here I am, student teaching, which is kind of crazy that it went by so fast, but I'm really, really enjoying it. So I'm glad that I stuck with it.
That's awesome. As a girl who grew up in Texas, I can attest to how necessary knowing that language is and also how beneficial it is to have someone who can speak English and Spanish. So that's really awesome. I love that.
Thank you.
Megan, looking back, I know I look back at my college experience and I'm like, I don't remember any classes I took or any professors I had. It was kind of a blur. For you, is there anything that stood out about any classes or professors you had that stood out to you?
Yeah, actually, there was 2. There was a husband and wife, David and Elizabeth Nelson. They were both special educators, and I happened to then be student teaching in their daughter's class, which was funny. And so that was the first time actually I had my same thing. I had a family of teachers, and it was like, of course I'm gonna do a teacher. But that was the first time I took a look at the professor and was thinking, hey, being a college professor would be a pretty decent gig. So I'm actually now a college professor, and that was part of the inspiration was sitting in their classes and just being so captivated by them and thinking that, you know, this would be a really great way to have a larger impact on, you know, on. So, I mean, I taught for a number of years, middle school special education, and then now I'm in teacher preparation. And I just want to say it's a good thing you're doing student teaching in the fall, because I did mine in the spring, and I was so tired that it actually impacted my performance because my legs, like I couldn't get my legs under me as much to shoot and to be as effective, because after a long day of student teaching, I was just so exhausted. And when you're hitting the February time frame, it was like, I'm over it. And so I think it's a really good thing that you're doing your student teaching in the fall.
It affected your performance, but I do believe you were a 3-time All-American. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't imagine what it would have been like then without the student teaching.
Better percentage, maybe. I don't know. But yeah.
Awesome. So next, let's talk about some stories. You guys have mentioned some things a little bit, but I would love to hear, starting out funny or crazy, but appropriate, some stories from your time on the team. So Kelly, you laughed a little bit, so I'm going to have you start. I'm going to pick on you.
Well, Kenzie and I were talking, what stories are we going to, in preparation for the podcast, what stories are we going to share? And the first one that came to both of our minds and all of our teammates, if you ask them, was the time that our bus, it was 2 years ago, I guess, right? Yep. 2 seasons ago, my sophomore year, Kenzie's freshman year. It was one of our first games. We were in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it was like a tip-off tournament.
Yeah. So, and the weather wasn't that bad. It was snowing, but it wasn't anything crazy, not like treacherous weather. Totally fine and safe to drive in. But we're on the bus and we're heading to the gym. And for some reason, our bus driver passed the complex that just didn't turn into the building, which is fine. She was like, all right, I'm going to turn around. So when I say probably like 200 feet down the road, there was a little, I don't even know how to call it, on the side of the road, there was an area where a normal sized car could have probably turned around. And our bus driver said, this works, we can do this. goes into the little turnabout area, but we're on a gigantic charter bus, so it should not have gone into this little turnabout area, because as the bus is trying to turn around and make a U-turn, the road, I guess, was kind of like higher up in the middle than it is on the sides, that the bus is perpendicular to the road and completely is like stuck. The back of the bus was like up on the hill of this turnaround. The wheels weren't even on the ground anymore.
That's fantastic.
She's trying to hit the gas and we're not going anywhere. And we could literally see from down the road, we could see the gym that we're supposed to be playing at in however many minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone's like, what do we do? Should we call our parents? Coach Poe? And Poe's like, no, nobody talk. Stop talking to me. Let me figure this out. Let me talk to the bus driver. And then a few minutes go by and she comes on the bus. Coach Poe comes on the bus and she's like, all right, girls, get your uniforms on. And we're like, what's going on? So we're all changing on the bus. We have no idea what's happening. But people from the college, the husband and a wife who worked in the athletic department from the college we were supposed to play at, had to come in their own cars and come pick us up from the bus that was stuck, like floating basically in the middle of the road.
Right.
That's like a cartoon.
Like no cars could go by either way. There was just cars lined up as we're filing off of this bus, getting into these people's cars.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
when we got out of the people's cars to go into the athletic complex, you could we all were taking videos because you could see right down the road and you could see the bus, like it looks like it's like teetering on the road. It was so crazy.
How'd you do that night?
We killed them.
Nice. What a motivator.
Got the energy up for sure. We were
The adrenaline.
down to the game.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Megan, how about you?
I don't have anything nearly as fantastic as that. But the one that came to mind was like this totally bizarre. One of my teammates was going for a loose ball with a girl, and there was like a pile, and she stood up after the ref blew the whistle, and she goes, "She bit me." Like someone from the other team had literally bitten her forearm.
Oh.
And we're all standing there like, no. And you look, and there are bite marks on her forearm. I mean, so there's so many questions about that. Like, what is a grown woman doing, biting? And I mean, there's a lot of questions, but the ref was like, and at that point I was the captain. So I'm saying to the ref, I'm like, that's gotta be a technical, that's gotta be something. And the refs had no idea what to do. I mean, this was, back before we were really much more aware of, like flagrant fouls and that kind of thing. Like they were just so disoriented. They just kept looking at each other and they just ended up just not doing anything. And so then my teammate had a bite mark on her arm for a good 2-3 days. Like it went like black and blue. It was the most bizarre scenario like I'd ever encountered. And it was very hard to finish the game. I mean, we ended up winning, thankfully, but it was very hard to like, that's a different approach for a team to take, is like, all right, let's just bite the arm. So I like the cartoon bus better though.
That's definitely a choice to make. You're right. Yeah.
There's intentionality. You don't accidentally bite somebody.
No, not a 2-day bruise.
No.
Okay, so those were funny or crazy, I guess you could say. Now let's just talk about your favorite memories. So during your time on the team with the program, what has been maybe the moment that's really stood out to you, something that means a lot? So Mackenzie, I'll have you go first.
Definitely our trip to Puerto Rico. Not many student athletes get to experience that, like going to somewhere so far and getting to still play at a high level while getting the touristy experience as well. And just being in a completely different area culturally. Like it was very cool. I know Kelly speaking Spanish, I was trying to understand, like we would go to a restaurant and I was like, Kelly, what does this mean? What does this mean? Like just that type of stuff. It was a very different experience and something we had to fundraise for and we had to definitely work towards. So we were very grateful to be able to go on a trip like that.
That's great to have her with you though.
Definitely. I can order my dinner and I don't know what I'm doing.
Exactly.
Kelly, what about you?
I'd also probably say Puerto Rico just because it was such a cool experience. Like Ken said, not a lot of teams get to do something like that. So I feel like it made that experience even more special. And just, I feel like the whole travel aspect, like it's not like, oh, we're just traveling to a normal game. It's like, no, we're going to Puerto Rico, that it's kind of everybody understands, even though if we don't talk about it, everyone understands, like, this is something really cool that we all get to do together and spend this time together. And like Ken said, like, even the cultural aspect, getting to walk around Old San Juan, and we're walking around in this old castle and learning about the history, like, just something really cool that you get to do with your teammates, which is just a really cool experience. But also, when we came back from Puerto Rico, we flew into JFK, and then we had to take this tiny little van all the way back up to Geneseo. And it was also on New Year's Eve. So that was, even though in the moment we were all like moaning and groaning, I definitely am going to look back on that fondly when I think about like me and my teammates all like this squished in the van as we're counting down 10, 9, because the ball's dropping and we're in the van driving back up to Geneseo.
And this van has like a wrap around it that's like Geneseo Athletics. Like every car we're passing knows this is the Geneseo bus. So it was definitely an experience.
A bit nicer trip than the North Country.
Definitely.
Do you dread the North Country trip as much as every other team before you? Okay, great.
I still do.
Yes.
Megan, what's your favorite memory?
So for me, we again didn't get to do all these fun things or have nice things. So no, for me it was my freshman year. We were actually ranked #1 in the country for a week. So that was like, that's pretty wild to just think about, that of all the D3 schools, you know, we were ranked #1. And that year we went to the Elite Eight, and that's when we got to fly out to Salem. But it was also really cool because I was the point guard, and as the point guard, I had an All-American 2 guard on my right and an All-American 3 guard on my left. So I really couldn't screw it up as long as I got it to one of them. I was pretty confident we were going to score and be successful. So that was the coolest part for me.
Definitely. Kelly, I wanted to ask another follow-up. I'm just so interested by this language, I guess. Was it cool? I don't know the makeup of Geneseo area, but was it cool to be kind of immersed in an area where you could speak Spanish and it was pretty common?
Yeah, for sure. I liked just walking around and hearing Spanish, but actually it wasn't like I'm just hearing gibberish. It was like, oh, I understand what that person's saying. But it was before I went to Spain. So sometimes, like, especially with the food, when people were looking at the menus and I'm like, oh, I don't know what that word is. And everyone's like, come on, Kel, like, why don't you? I'm like, guys, I don't know every word in the whole language. Like, I'm trying my best, but it was definitely cool. And I really felt like I could appreciate, I mean, not that everyone didn't appreciate the cultural aspect, but just because it's something that interests me and it's kind of what my career is going to be, that I thought it was so cool. And that was my first time going anywhere Spanish speaking. So it was really cool for me.
And Katie, if you knew anything about Geneseo, you'd know that there were not a lot of Spanish speakers in that small little rural area. So it is, you know, the immersion is not going to happen anywhere near Geneseo.
I assumed, but I didn't want to make a total assumption. Once again, I grew up in Texas, so it's all around you.
Right.
But I know that's not the norm once you get too much more north. All right, so those are the stories, the things on campus. Now we're just going to get into some general D3 stuff before we wrap it up. So the first thing, and I'll start with Megan on this one. I want to talk about maybe what it means to you to have been a Division III student athlete. How has that maybe helped you, whether that was being able to do more things during your time on campus, whether that's classes, clubs, academic things, and then how has that maybe gone into as you've moved into your career, how has that benefited you?
I mean, I loved it because there was the emphasis on academics first. And I mean, I chose Geneseo. Thankfully, they had a really good basketball program, but I wouldn't have gone there if they didn't have a really solid academic tradition, and especially in the area of teaching. So it was great to know that academics came first. And I felt like our coaches were 100% on board with that, and that we weren't asked to prioritize. There wasn't like a bait and switch in terms of when you're being recruited versus when you get there. It's, you know, what you get to do academics first, and you're not, you know, turned into this sports first, sports only type of approach. You know, now being an instructor or being a professor at different D1 institutions, like, I just see like how much of a toll the balance is. It's just so much harder to keep any type of balance, especially in education, if you're looking at trying to do your field experiences and your student teaching and trying to navigate the schedule that is asked of you in D2 or D3. And so I really appreciated with D3 that it was academic focused, and I think with less pressure on the sports piece, I think it really helped me to develop deep relationships with some of my teammates. Just building those skills of being a team and fighting through adversity, I think have really benefited me well going forward. And then you don't end up staying in contact with all your teammates, but no matter what, you have this shared experience. Obviously that's not specific just to Division III, but it just feels like a different type of experience, like Kelly and Mackenzie have said, just hanging out with the team and having that shared experience, even if it's in between classes, or like you all are having the same stressors, the same challenges, at least in your school and your sports life. And so it's nice to to have those people to feel like you can turn to, and you're not being pulled in as many directions.
I love your perspective as someone who's now working or has worked in your career with Division I student athletes. I think that's a cool perspective to see it from after knowing what you experienced. Mackenzie, and then Kelly, you can follow.
I would say balancing playing the sport you love and still competing at an extremely high level, and still being able to do like the extracurriculars. Like me and Kelly are both very involved within the athletic department, extracurriculars and stuff for my major too, like a woman in business club, like that type of stuff you get to do while still playing basketball. And also like the team, going off of what Megan said, like the team is family. We have those shared experiences, those stressors, like you were saying, we experience the same stuff. So it really bonds us together, and we really mean it when we say like this team becomes family to everyone who joins the Geneseo women's basketball program.
Yeah, for sure. And I can relate to what you said, Megan, about coming here for like the education program is so well known. I know like we both come from families of educators, and I've had so many relatives say like, yeah, when you come from Geneseo with a degree in education, like you're kind of put in a different bracket. So I really appreciated that when I was doing my college search, because I already knew I wanted to be a teacher. So I wanted to go somewhere where I could play basketball still at a high level and be a part of a team, because that is something that's so important to me, just being a part of a team, something bigger than yourself, but while still getting a degree that somebody's going to look at when I'm going to get a job, and they're going to say, wow, like this kid went to a really great school, had a great education. So that was super important for me when I made my decision about coming to Geneseo, but also agree totally with the whole, we're a family and all those shared experiences that we have. I mean, not that we have an experience in D1 or D2, but it does feel like this is it, just based on what you see, like, social media and on TV, and you're watching these big schools and big games. It just, here it's intimate, and even the whole department as a whole, like we're very close with other sports teams, and even other coaches know our faces and know our names and say, hey, good luck at your game today. It feels much more inclusive in a sense, and more like a sense of belonging, I guess, within the department as a whole, and even on the campus, because there are professors that when we leave halfway through the middle of a lecture with our backpack as we're leaving for a game, and the professor will stop the class and say, hey, good luck this weekend, even though they have nothing to do with the athletic department. They're just a professor. But, our athletes we're treated really well on this campus and respected for what we do, because it is a lot to do being a college student and getting a degree while still balancing practices and lifts and games and all that. So I can really appreciate the balance as well.
Mm-hmm. I think the people here from the athletic department to our professors and to just the people in the Geneseo community that come to watch all of our games, they generally want to see us succeed, whether that's in academics, athletics, and both at the same time. They want us to have the most out of this experience.
That's great. All right, my last question for all three of you, as we talked about ahead of time and in my emails, this podcast is part of our 50th anniversary of Division III celebration. So we're 50 years down. We've come a long way, and there's lots more to do and lots more time for us to do it. So I'd love to hear what you all wish to see, or what you think you'll see with the future of Division III. And I know it's a broad question, but if you can pick something out of what you just wish the future of Division III looks like. And I will start with you again, Megan.
I hope it remains where it doesn't turn into a job. I think that's some of the issues with different divisions, and people get burned out, or you're more likely to get injuries that I'm a bunch of years out, and it's like you feel the creaks, and you don't think of, okay, that time I sprained my ankle my sophomore year of college, that, when I'm in my 40s, all of a sudden it's going to be bothering me, but I can literally trace it back to, to the playing days. But to know that you're not, no matter what, like, you're going to be cared for as a whole person, I guess is my point with that. And not just going to be forced to get back out sooner than you're expected to, or sooner than's healthy for you, because it's a job and you have donors and you have all these people that you have to answer to. And so I know I keep making these connections to divisions that aren't Division III, but I just hope we don't move in that direction. And I know name, image, and likeness, can change some things, but hopefully that just changes it for an athlete and not for the whole culture and environment of Division III, which is that balanced environment that we've all been mentioning.
Mackenzie, Kelly, whoever wants to start.
I would say, we talk about the student coming before athlete a lot, but also just taking care of yourself first and foremost, like mentally and physically. Like Megan said, we joke about when we're 40, we're going to feel.
You are. You are.
Putting ourselves now, but just continuing to grow in the D3 and more resources for student athletes. I know we have a lot more than our past alumni have had, and just continuing to build on that, and we're people first, and just remembering that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think just maintaining that, I don't know if you would call it the culture of D3, but, putting the person first before the sport. And like Megan said, it's not becoming your job. Like, you are a student here. You're here to get a degree in education and to make yourself this well-rounded individual to go off into, the real world. And yes, you're here to play basketball too, and win games and practice hard and things like that. But there are other things that are important in your life, and especially things like, having those conversations about mental health and how, keeping your balance with your sports and your academics, and still being able to do those things while preserving your own mental health and staying healthy, even physically too. So, we talk a lot about, we have a club here, Morgan's Message, which is, a national thing through a bunch of different universities, D1, D2, D3, that really talks about the stigma of mental health and works to end the stigma of mental health, especially in relation to athletics. So I think just, growing in those areas and not forgetting those aspects is really important for D3 in general.
Great. I love that. And that's a great way to end this podcast. Mackenzie, Kelly, Megan, thank you all so much for joining me today. I've had a great time hearing your stories. I hope no more buses get stuck on hills.
Please send video if it does.
Yeah, you said you were recording videos. I think you need to send that into our little email thread.
I would love to see it.
Yeah, we'll find one. We got a bunch.
Okay, perfect. I hope no one gets bit this season.
Yeah, well.
So the best of luck to you two this season. Best of luck to you this semester, Professor.
Great, thank you.
And thank you all so much for taking the time to join me today.
All right.
Very much. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Go Knights, one night.
Go Knights.
To everyone listening, thanks for tuning into this episode of Small Talk. We post new episodes every Thursday. To follow along with everything Division III, you can find us on social media at NCAA D3 or NCAA DIII. Make sure to join the conversation with us all year long by using the hashtag DIII50. Have a great day, and we'll see you for some more Small Talk next week.